Hi everyone, and welcome to DevHour first session. So my name is Martin, and I'm a developer and co-founder of Deverything. And together with me, I have.
I'm Jarmo. I'm also a co-founder of Deverything, as well as a consultant. The idea of starting DevHour actually came from our employees, where we had a session last year where they asked us that they would want to have some more sort of internal trainings or some way of learning new things, some sort of channel to make things work.
So this is our very first session. Obviously, we are not very trained in online streaming and things like that. It's the first time we do it, and we will be doing some live coding as well. So keep that in mind with your reviews, and of course, we appreciate feedback as well. We're not that many in the meeting today, so we can perhaps take questions during the session. But if you prefer, the easiest way is just write in the chat any questions you have, and we'll try to involve it during the presentation as well. Yeah, and the big picture of what we will be developing during our 5-chapter series, which includes a lot of different sessions. It's more or less something where we go from scratch, setting up a project and deploying it into AWS. And we will use a lot of services from AWS, as well as managing a Kubernetes cluster and using container registries and security and all of those things. Everything is not set for all incoming sessions, so we might change them up a little bit depending on how far we get in each session. And we plan 1 hour per session, but it might be that some are shorter and some might require us to go into more than one session. We haven't really measured all the session times and how long each code part will take. But apart from that, I mean, the big picture is, as I mentioned, getting something into AWS, setting up Kubernetes both locally and automated deployments into AWS. But we will start very simple today. So for those who are more senior, don't be frightened to listen in next time as well, because today it's more to just get us off the ground. But with that said, Jarmo, maybe you want to introduce the first session?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Let me see. So today we're gonna start getting started with a new Spring project. We're gonna set up 3 microservices using Spring Boot. We will configure the Maven POM structure using a parent and children or submodule sort of structure. And once we have done that the kind of manual way, we'll also jump in and show you. We will discuss a little bit about how Maven works and the structure, and then we'll jump into something called JHipster, which is a generator, Yeoman generator used to create projects rather quickly. And it's a great way to get started fast and start prototyping and things like that. We will not base our future development on the JHipster project, but it's something so cool and it gives you so much for free that we figured, okay, let's show them this from the beginning, and then you can feel free to play around with it at home.
Yeah. And something I didn't mention regarding this whole DevHour concept is that we will touch on a lot of different frameworks and tools and things like that. And some parts we are very good at and work daily with, but some parts we are perhaps not the biggest experts. We take it from a developer perspective. So, of course, running a Kubernetes setup in a production environment, that's requires a lot of skill. That's not something we have done, but we have played around with the Kubernetes as developers. So that's the perspective we will be providing. And of course, there are many ways to, for example, do your Docker images or Kubernetes or whatever you want. But from our perspective, this is an easy way to get started. And then you on your own have to dig into, like, if you want to learn a lot more about specifics. So we will be touching a lot of different subjects and getting you started with them. Some you have heard about, some maybe you haven't. And from there, you can use Google to improve your skill set as well. All right, should we get started with the first part then?
Yes. Let's get to it. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go to start. Wrong keyboard. Start.spring.io. This is called the Spring Initializer. Basically, it's a web page provided by Spring that helps you start your projects kind of fast. So we're gonna go ahead and choose a Maven project for what we're gonna be using. We're gonna be using Java as it's already pre-selected. We're gonna be using the latest release version, which is 2.6.2. And then we're gonna start with our group, which is usually com. The name of the company, Deverything, and then DevHour, which is what we're gonna be doing now. And then we're gonna have a product service. And then this name is basically a human readable name of what this service is, which is a product service. The description we can leave the same, demo project for Spring Boot. And the package name will be com.deverything.devhour.product service as well. We're going to be using a jar packaging. It's going to be an executable jar. And we're going to be using Java 17 just because we want to go latest and greatest on all the things. And that's how cool we are. Then we're going to add some dependencies. These dependencies are going to help us do certain things. We're going to start with Lombok, which is a Java annotation library, which helps reduce boilerplate code. So things like getters and setters and those kind of things. It abstracts away from your classes so that you don't have to have them there, and it just generates them at compile time. And then we're going to also add Spring Boot dev tools, which actually allows us to run our application, perform live reloads as we're changing the code. You will see your application restarting automatically, so you don't have to like stop the old instance, start a new instance, and then check the changes that you've done. How has that helped us change? We're also gonna add. We're also gonna add Spring Web, which will help us build our RESTful services. Using Spring MVC. As you see here, it uses Apache Tomcat as a default embedded container. We'll probably switch to a different container just because we can, and to try it out whenever we get to that point. And I think last but not least, we're gonna go with the Spring Actuator, which is part of the ops part of Spring, and it gives us built-in support for endpoints that lets you monitor your application. So you can like call endpoints in your application, and will tell you what's the health state, how much memory is being consumed, sort of metrics, how many sessions you have live, maybe if you're using some sort of cache, how many times the cache has been hit, these kind of things. So the cool thing with this Spring Initializer is that apart from you just being able to do these kind of things and it generates the project for you, you can explore it. For example, here, we can see that it's going to be using the Maven model version 4, which is the latest. Then we have a parent that is going to be the Spring Boot starter parent, which is most Spring Boot projects have this as a parent, and then it will use that to populate all the other dependencies that we will have related to Spring. Then we have our own group ID, which is com.deverything DevHour, as we defined before. Our artifact is the product service. It gives it a 001 snapshot version. Our name, there was a human readable name of our product service, which is product service. A description as well. We're also telling it in a property called java.version that is going to be the version 17. It has all our dependencies that we have selected. It has the actuator, it has the web, it has the dev tools, it has the Lombok, and it has also added Spring Boot starter test, which will help us test our application. And it's using something that is called scope. So when you add the scope and you add, for example, test, it means that this dependency will only be used when you're running the test. So this dependency won't be packaged together with your application when you're doing runtime, for example, as with the dev tools, or compile time as with Lombok and the web starter. Other things that we can see in this POM file are the build part of the POM file, which is in this case only has some plugins. Then some plugins, in this case it has the Spring Boot Maven plugin, and in there you can include and exclude different things, configurations. In this case it's excluding the Lombok artifact from the build plugin. You can also see here to the left that it has added a Maven Wrapper. So basically, if you didn't have Maven installed, you could use this Maven Wrapper to run your project. And it will help you with things like you just write MVN and it will run your application. It will start up the server and it will get you up and running. It also has the main part of the Java code, resources, application properties. It also created your test directory with an initial test here called product service application tests that is supposed to be testing this product service application, which is your Spring Boot application. And the only thing this guy does is saying, hey, run myself, please. All right, so that was a lot of talking, and still we haven't generated anything. So let's go ahead, and if also I forgot to mention, if you wanted to share this with some friend or something, you would just click share, copy this link that you have there, and if I would open up another browser tab, for example, and I paste it here, you will see that it has opened it up again with exactly the things that we had set up before. It's a Maven project using Java with Spring Boot 2.6.2, and all the settings, and also all our dependencies are there, which that was pretty cool. Now I click generate. Generate basically produces a zip file. I open up this zip file and it gives me the product service. On this product service, I'm just gonna move to my, or well, before I move that, I'm gonna create my other services. So I also want to have an order. I also want to have an order service.
I'll just mention while you do this, John, that we're going to have 3 different services, one product, one order service, and one report service. So the thought is that, I mean, we're not really focusing on the code in this part. It's more like just having skeletons to work with. And it's more, you can think of it like a web shop thing. You can list products and you can place an order and you get a report for it when it's placed. So that's just a very simple project to work around, and we will focus more on the other things around the actual code itself right now, at least. Later on we will dive into Hibernate and store database things and stuff like that, but that's later sessions. But just to understand the concept of why we have these 3 microservices.
Then I don't know if we talked about it, but in our GitHub repository, Deverything AB, you will find the DevHour repository. There we will be uploading all our code. You can see that we've already started more or less with the skeleton for the first 3 sessions, but it's actually pretty empty. So this session we will be filling up the first one. So feel free to come here, go to Deverything AB's GitHub, go into DevHour and just clone it. We will be uploading all of the sessions will be there. The idea of it is that whenever we're done today, the number 1 will be filled up, and that we will copy for the next session, and we will continue working on that for session number 2 when we deploy it with Kubernetes, and so on and so on and so on. So it doesn't matter if you miss one session, you will always be able to come back and continue from where you stopped. We're also recording all these sessions, so you will be able to find the link to these sessions. Probably we'll add it to this repository as well, so you know where to go find them on YouTube, and you can follow along as we're going. Cool. So we have our 3 services: report service, order service, and product service. I'm just gonna go ahead and copy them to our, oops, I had previously cloned the DevHour. Hello. It's not collaborating. Here we go.
Live coding is always nice.
So we go into DevHour, I go into product, the number 1, and there we have it, right? So seems pretty easy. We have the report service, we have the product service, and we have the order service all ready to run. Maybe I should actually show you that we can run one of them or two.
Yeah, do that.
Where am I? So let's go to, I don't even remember where I cloned it.
DevHour.
GitHub, there we go. And I go into session 1, getting started with this Spring project. Here you have the order service, the product service, the report service. Let's start with the report service just because. And here I could just write the Maven and it should be able to clean, but no goals had been specified.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna go Maven clean install. With this command, we're basically cleaning the history and we're going all through the life cycle of Maven from clean all the way up to install. So it's gonna download all dependencies, it's gonna compile the code, it's gonna build it, and then it's gonna install the binary into our local Maven cache. So here you see it ran one test, it didn't have any failures. Then we packaged all our code into a jar, and finally we installed it into where I have my M2 cache, which is at /user/jarmalinmax/.m2, and it was successful. Well, what if I would want to run it? Then I would simply write something like Maven Spring Boot run, and what this command means is that I'm telling Maven, please use the Spring Boot plugin, and the Spring Boot plugin, within the Spring Boot, we want to run a command called run, and that's what the colon means. So the colon says, within this plugin, use this command. So now we're going to run our application for the very first time. I'm not sure what's going to happen here, if we're going to get something to show, but at least our application is going to be up and running.
Yeah, the actuator can
you
show.
See Tomcat has been initialized with port 8080. So we know that our application is going to be live under our localhost on port 8080. There's nothing to show here because we haven't configured anything in our application, but we do have the actuator, the actuator code, which maybe
Actuator, yeah, actuator just status, for example. Okay. Was I wrong? There we go.
So I tried
health, yes.
I tried the health endpoint of the actuator, and it gives us a status that yes, our service is up and running. Cool. So that was our first time starting up a Spring Boot server with an application that does absolutely nothing apart from telling us that yes, I am up and running. Pretty cool. It completed in 2 milliseconds, which is pretty fast. Then I'm always using the wrong computer.
One thing to consider when you want to use the actuator. So in the older Spring Boot versions, you got all the endpoints for actuator enabled by default. Nowadays, it's only the help that is available. So you need to actually enable more endpoints on the actuator if you want to, and you will do that by modifying the application properties. That's just a side note. If you want to use more, for example, if you want to expose the EVM properties that you're running on and how much memory is in use. So that's just something you can just add if you want to. But for now, all we really need is to make sure it's up.
Yeah. So okay, so that was the report service. And as you can see, we have the order service, we have the product service, the report service. And even though they're in the same repository or in the same code repository, they're not related to each other in any way. Bring it over to the screen. Maybe I should go ahead and open these guys up in... Okay, so now I have opened up my project in IntelliJ, which is an IDE. And I can see that I
quite small.
Yeah, sorry, I cannot change the font size on the left part, but basically I'm looking at the order service, product service, and report service, and I'm gonna go ahead and open up one of their POM files. So this is the order service. I will make this bigger for you.
Yeah.
How much bigger?
That's probably good.
Okay, if you guys cannot see this, please let us know. You will notice something like, okay, there's a parent pump here, and all the dependencies that we talked about. There's also the plugin. So this is the Spring Boot plugin that we were actually calling before when we did Spring Boot run. What we're gonna want to do now is we're gonna create a structure where these three services are related to each other. So we do that by creating a parent POM, and that parent POM we will put at the root of this directory where the three services are there. And then we, instead of pointing each of the services to the Spring Boot started parent, we will point them to the actual parent that we're gonna create. So and while we're there, I wanted to show you that you can also use Maven itself as the provider of archetypes. Well, cheat a little bit. Find it. Here we go. So you can use sorry, wrong computer again. Maven archetype, and then we're gonna generate the project there, and we're gonna tell it that the archetype group ID is gonna be equal to com.deverything dot DevHour, I think, as we had on the other ones, and the archetypes artifact ID is going to be equal to
parent, perhaps. Yeah.
Let's just call it parent, and then we click on generate. Then it's gonna ask us a couple of questions. Do we want to choose a number or apply a filter? If you click enter, it will choose the default option, and the default option is 8. Group ID.
That's common everything.
Which is strange that it's asking again, but
yeah, but the reason it asks you is because you used the archetype instead of just going straight for group ID and artifact ID, I think. Yeah, simple mistake. But so now you have to fill it out again. An artifact ID would be parent in this case. All right.
All right, so now this guy created a folder called parent. Let me switch to the IDE because it will be easier to see there. And it also has a source file, it has a POM file. Let me make this bigger again. All right. I've added a random website and whatnot. So what we're gonna do now is 2 things. I don't want this POM file to be in a folder called parent. I want it to be in that folder, so I'm just gonna move it there. I'm gonna delete this folder parent because I don't need it. And then I'm gonna go into any of the ones that Spring created for me. I'm pretty much just gonna copy all of the things that are here, including the parent. Let's see what parts. So I'll start by copying the parent. Here we go. I'm just going to paste it here. I have my parent now. So now I'm saying the parent of my parent is the Spring Boot starter. So that will allow my parent to import all the versions that are defined in this Spring Boot starter parent's POM file. I will have a relative path here, meaning that it will look this parent from the repository. It will not try to find it in the hierarchy of our code itself. It will go to either the remote repositories or my local repository where it will try to find it. And then I'm also going to copy the rest of the things all the way from properties down to the build. For now, all the projects are gonna do exactly the same. So I'm just gonna copy paste this into our parent, and I'm gonna remove it from all the other guys, because all the other guys are gonna know that this is their new parent.
Yeah, and they will inherit what the parent has. So they won't need their own dependencies for this. Which is a great way to structure code if you have something you actually share between projects.
So let me make this bigger for you. So now in the report service, I'm gonna say, hey, Mr. Report Service, you are actually a child of the DevHour parent project. And I'm actually gonna switch these guys to 0 snapshot because I like that better. I'm gonna remove the relative path here so it actually goes one level up and try to find its parent. I'm gonna remove the version here so that it uses the parent's version as well. And we're pretty much done-ish. Oops. Let me just copy this and paste it on the other projects. So that was the report service. Now I go to the product service and do the exact same thing there. Pretty much remove all of these things all the way up to the properties, and then switch the parent out for the parent that I just copied from the other project, and remove the version from this guy as well. And due to some copy paste magic, I have to do the same in the order service. Maybe you can tell them a joke in the meantime, Martin.
Yeah, I'm great at jokes. Yeah, or I can explain why we want to do this more in detail. So there is, of course, the reason to have dependencies located in one place. When you build a parent, when you have the parent POM, you can use it both for actually bringing in the dependencies, but it's also preferable to use like dependency management, which is part of Maven as well, where you can define what versions a child module can use. So for example, if we had a Lombok, but we didn't want all our submodules to actually use Lombok, but we want, if they want to use it, they should use a specific version. So then we would define that in our parent POM as well. Like, okay, we manage dependencies for Lombok and we managed version X. And if a child wants to use it, they can import it, but they have to use, or they let the parent decide. So you have a way to structure your code so all children use the same versions. That's dependency management. And in this case, we're actually injecting the real dependencies. So this is real dependency real dependencies, not dependency management. So these will be injected to all the jar files we build that there are child modules. In this case, it's needed because we want to have these dependencies, and all of them should have it. But later on, we might add a couple of dependency management sections as well. So the way you define a dependency management is more or less exactly the same as dependencies, except that you have to set versions, for example. So on the group ID, artifact ID, you have the same, and you just enter version as well.
And then when you want to use them in your children, you basically do the same as here. Just declare it as a dependency, and that way you will actually use that dependency. So the things that are in the dependency management section will not be by default used or injected into the rest of the projects. It's just more or less there to say, hey, these are the dependencies, and if you're going to use one of these dependencies, this is the version that you're going to use.
Yeah.
And then when you actually use it in your project, you put it under dependencies as it is for right now. It's right there. This will evolve as we keep going into these sessions. So you actually get to see the use of dependency management. Maybe we'll configure some other plugins. So maybe we'll add some sort of profiles as well. So there's a lot of things that you can do with Maven when it comes to setting up your project. But for now, now we have set up our project so that now we have a parent POM, and all of these other services are pointing to this parent POM saying, hey, this is my parent. So if I start looking at this parent POM, I should be able to say, hey, I am a parent and my modules are the following. I have the module order service. As you can see, the IDE already understands that, hey, I can see that you have something called a product service under me. So I'm gonna allow you to use autocomplete. It can also autocomplete the different parts of the POM file because we have declared which version of the model we're using and so on. So it's easy to sort of continue building on top of these things, or if you want to find out, okay, what other functionalities are there in a POM file, you can just start by opening the braces and see, okay, what else is there? Contribution, dependencies, developers, distribution management. There's so many things that can be configured here. All right, so we have our parent POM. We're parent POM is saying that, hey, we have these submodules or modules in our project: order service, product service, report service. And then we have the actual services there as well. So let's go ahead and try to build it now and see what happens. So here I would do the same clean install, Maven clean install. I run that, and we should be able to. Sorry, that was great. That happened because then you can see that the default packaging of a POM file is a jar file. So our other order service, the product service, and the report service, if you remember when we were generating them with the Spring Initializer, we said, hey, our packaging is going to be jar. And since jar is the default packaging type, then nothing was added to them. But you actually have to add the packaging here and say, hey, I'm actually just a POM file. I'm not going to be a jar file. I'm just a POM file. So we had, in order for you to build a parent POM, you should have a packaging called POM. Otherwise, jar is not a valid packaging for a parent. So a parent can only be a POM file. So we added that change to our POM file. We tried to run it again, and now we should be seeing that it's going to be building a Reactor Build. The Reactor Build has, let me see if I can scroll without it jumping back again. The Reactor Build is going to build in this order. It's going to build the parent first, then it's going to build the order service, then the product service, and then the report service. If it would happen that we have some dependency from the order service to, or from the report service to the, from the order service to the report service, then it would probably build the report service first because it knows it needs it to be able to build the order service. And then it goes one by one, building all of them. It builds the first one, it builds the second one, it builds the third one, etc. And we can see that, okay, we have successfully created a Reactor build of our parent POM and all of its modules. So we have the parent, the order service, the product service, and the report service. They have all been built, and we're successful at that, at least. I think that concludes at least the quick start, getting started with Spring Boot with Maven. And now we can go ahead and add how are we on time?
Well, we're good. We have 20 minutes.
Please, I don't know if we said it in the beginning, but if you have any questions, write them in the chat, and Martin here will try to scan through them, and we'll answer them as soon as we can. If you want to use your camera, that's fine. If you want to use voice, that's also welcome. In the meantime, we will continue. So I wanted to show you JHipster. JHipster. Sorry.
So Jarmo has two keyboards here. That's why he's typing on the wrong one all the time.
So I'm also at assignment, right? We're all consultants here. We're all out at assignment. Both me and Martin are also out at assignment. So I have a couple of computers here. So I have my Deverything computer, and I have my customer's computer as well. And this keyboard I have attached to my customer's computer, but it's right in front of me, so I keep trying to write on it. So that's why I've been failing at it. But anyway, so JHipster. What is JHipster? Well, if you go to jhipster.tech, which is a cool URL on its own, you will arrive at this landing page where it actually tells you what JHipster is, how it works, and so on, what you will need to build it. You will need to have Java installed, you will need Git, you will need Node.js, and then you will use Node to install the generator JHipster. So all these steps I've already done in my machine. It takes a couple of minutes to download all the things, so we figured we can skip the downloading all the artifacts and go straight to the nitty-gritty. And basically all you do is create your directory where you want your application to be at. You go into that directory and then you just run JHipster. So let's do that. So I'm still here. I have my parent POM and my other projects. Maybe I'm just gonna create that directory here. I'm not sure we will push this one out. We probably won't. But I'm just gonna do this here for now. I'm gonna call it the JHipster because that makes sense. So I go into JHipster and then I just run JHipster. Oh,
Corona.
Sorry about that. So it's gonna ask me a bunch of questions like what type of application I want to create. In this case, I want to create you could create a microservice application where you can build on top of those microservices. You can build multiple microservices. You can create a gateway application that's sort of gonna be the one that's talking to the rest of the microservices. Or you can create a monolithic application, which is recommended for simple projects. So let's go for a monolithic application. So let's call it a microservice, but it's only going to be one, right? Then what is the best name of our application? I'm just going to call it DevHour. Do you want to make it reactive, Spring Flux? The default answer is the capitalized one. So no, I just press enter. What is my default Java package name? It's going to be com.deverything.devhour. Do I want to use authentication? You can use JWT authentication. It's going to be stateless using tokens. You can use OAuth 2. You can use HTTP session authentication, which is the default Spring security mechanism. So just to keep it easy, I'm just going to go for that one. You would most likely go for OAuth 2, depending on what kind of application, or if it's a machine-to-machine, maybe you go with just a stateless token. But I'm going to go with the HTTP session. Then I'm going to have a SQL database that is going to be Postgres, why not, for development. For production, and for development, it's going to be H2 in memory. Do you want some sort of cache? And if so, which abstraction do you want to use? Well, right now I'm not interested in caching anything, so I'm going to say no cache. I'm going to use Maven. We do not want JHipster register to configure, monitor, and scale our applications. It's basically like what we're going to use for our containers later, that we're going to be using the Kubernetes. It's sort of something like that will orchestrate JHipster and be able to scale the application down or up and monitor it and whatnot. We don't want that for now. It will ask you, do you want any other technologies like Elasticsearch for super fast searching? Do you want WebSockets? Do you want to use Apache Kafka for message brokering? Are you going to do API first and so on? So I'm just going to press enter there to choose none of them. which frameworks do you want to use for the client? In this case, it's just going to be a web page. I'm going to go for Angular because I enjoy Angular compared to the others. Do you want to generate the admin UI? I'm going to say yes because that's the default. Do we want to switch the theme? I'm just going to go with the default JHipster theme. Do we want the internationalization support? I'm going to say yes. The language of the application is English, but maybe we'll also add Swedish over there so we can switch between languages. So you use your spacebar to choose Swedish. Maybe I throw in Spanish as well because I'm from Mexico. And then it's already going to include things like JUnit. It's going to use Jest for front-end testing. And then you're able to add some other testing frameworks. For example, Gatling for load testing, or Cucumber for what you call it?
UI?
Well, it doesn't matter. Like contract testing or something like that. Would you like to install other generators from the marketplace? JHipster has a bunch of marketplace things that you can, like add-ons or cool scrollers, infinite scrollers, and things like that. I don't want to add any of that because we are running out of time. And then you can see that it's generating a lot of things, right? So it's creating many files. It's creating both backend files, it's creating front-end files, it's creating me tests, it's creating all sort of things that you can think about. It's already gonna configure authentication for me. It's already gonna configure all the other Spring things that we need. It's gonna configure all the Angular things using TypeScript. It's gonna have tests for the front end as well. So like from the moment you start your project, you have all the things in place. It also has a very sweet way of structuring the code so that it's easy to find where each part of the code is going to be. So you'll know where your services are, you will know where your database entities are, and so on. So while it's working, let's look at the next step, right? It says model your entities in this JDL Studio and download the resulting JDL file, and then generate your entities with this command. So let's go to the JDL Studio. It's basically a tool that helps you if you already know that, hey, I have this database model. Can you guys see?
Yep. But maybe a little bit bigger would be nice. Something like that. That works.
Yeah. So here, for example, they have an example. No? It's going to be a patient. There's some sort of image. There's a location, a diagnosis for that image, some healthcare dependency, and a receipt for that patient. So we'll just go for the default one instead of trying to create one. But you can see that it's basically, if you're used to Hibernate, you will sort of understand what they mean. So it's like entities are your database tables, and they have different types. It tells it if it's required or not. It will also use these kind of things required for when it generates the front end parts for it to make sure that you must fill this in before you send it in. It will also do the same in the back end, so it has double checks. As you would expect in a production database production application. You can also add relationships, like in this case, you have a one-to-one relationship from image to location, from healthcare to location, from receipt to healthcare dependency, and so on. Many-to-one from image to diagnosis. So then how will you paginate these things? Okay, we want to paginate all the things, right? We want to paginate every page that you generate regarding my entities. I want you to paginate. And I also want data transport objects, and I want you to use map struct to map my entities to those data transport objects. Do you want your services to be abstract or interfaces and then have the actual implementation implemented? Yes, I do want that. Do you want the Angular suffix to be Devery? Yes, we want it to be, and so on. So here you could actually change the type of pagination. Like there's many things to read there, but let's just go for the default. I'm just gonna click download here.
And just to mention, this is a really good way to learn data structure as well. If you're not very familiar with like setting up a database schema and things like that, this is a really good way to get something generated for you by more or less writing no code. And you can see, because they follow a lot of best practices. So this and that also comes for all the code that is generated by JHipster, that even though you might don't need a project right now, just generating a project like a gateway or a microservice, you can follow along their code and see, okay, how have they created this setup? So then you probably get a knowledge of, okay, this is probably a very good practice on how to structure code and how to implement it. So sometimes you can use it for generating your project, and sometimes you just generate things to actually dive into code and see what best practices they are using, because they are really good at this.
All right, so I downloaded that file. I copied it to my application folder, as you can see here, jhipster JDL, and then I just run jhipster JDL and the name of the file. I press enter. It's gonna go through all the things. It's gonna ask me things like, hey, I'm gonna modify some files. Is this fine with you or not? I'm gonna create some files. There's some conflicts. I wanna say yes to, I'm gonna press help to see what happens. And it's gonna say yes to overwrite and Y to overwrite and to not overwrite, etc., etc., etc. I want it to overwrite all the files. So maybe now you can see where it can become a problem. So if you were to add business logic to the generated files that are created by JHipster, and then your model changes and you want to use JHipster to regenerate your or generate more classes and so on, then it will come to a point where you won't be able to continue using JHipster to generate the new classes, but at least you will have a solid foundation to where you can just copy paste or see how they have done other things. Why do I say you won't be able to? Because if you start adding all these sort of business rules into the generated classes, and you run into this problem that says, hey, do you want to change this or not? And you actually change the things, it will mean that everything that was there is gone, and it will regenerate them for you. So all your business logic is gone. So then before pushing or something, you would have to go file by file, making sure that all the changes you have done is actually back, and it's many files that it changes, including the front end files and all the tests as well.
Yeah, I think the basic thing here is that you generate once until you're happy, and then you start evolving your code on your own, updating it with the schema. It can really go wrong in so many places. So the strong recommendation is to get a solid base and then start your coding in it, I guess.
I'm just gonna use the Maven Wrapper that comes with it to run the application. It's gonna download a bunch of things, and while it's downloading and running, I will show you what the code looks like. So it actually generated all that you see following here. It has already created our Docker foundation for Dockerifying our application. It has all the Java files where we can see the AOP for logging. We have all the config files in one package. We have our domain classes or our entities in the domain package. We have all the database repositories in the repository packages. Security under security, services under services. Under services, you have the DTOs, you have the actual implementation of the services, you have the mappers from the DTOs to the actual entities, and from the entities to the DTOs. You have all the web classes where you have all your controllers, your REST controllers, how you're gonna handle errors, how you're gonna do these kind of things as well. So for example, if we go into a REST controller, you will see that, okay, it's using all of the things that you would expect it to use from Spring and so on. So it's using Spring Framework, beans, HTTP statuses, web bindings, etc. It's using request mappings to the right sort of
Context path.
context path. Then you have the diagnosis, certain with IDs. It's doing the checks that they're actually valid, that the body's going to be a DTO, that you're going to be returning a DTO, then you're going to be using all the services that are up there. It's like all the things that have been created for you. This was the backend part, right? And then you actually have a web app where you have all the front end parts as well. So you have your routers, you have your internationalization, which shows English, Spanish, and Swedish. So there you have your files for English, for example, activate, activation, Spanish, activate, activación, and then you have Swedish, activate, activering. So you see sort of how all the things start going together. It also provides you with a Swagger UI, so you can see your you can actually see your APIs in Swagger without having to do much more. It's all your content with your CSS, your images. Here you have the actual TypeScript files with the modules, the different routing rules, the login screens, the different layouts, all the entities, the admin part of it. So for just a couple of clicks, you got so much out of this application. So yeah, as you can see, now it started running. It is running on port 8080 as well, and this started in 20 seconds. So it took us 20 seconds to start from scratch to create an application, and the application looks like the following.
Wrong keyboard. Classic.
Here you go. Welcome to Hipster DevHour. It's under development because it's using a snapshot version. So if we were using a release version, or if I would actually run the application in production mode, you would not see this development flag there. It has a cool hipster dude there as well. You can see that I can change to Español, and now it says Bienvenido. I can change to Svenska, Välkommen. I can switch back to English because that's what most people do, and it actually tells you, hey, I already created 2 users for you, an administrator and a user. So let's just log in as an administrator before time runs out. I'm gonna sign in as admin, which is probably something that you will want to change immediately. Even Chrome lets you know that, hey, your password sucks. So we're gonna ignore it for now. We're never gonna save that. And now we have logged in, right? Oh, it seems like there's nothing here. There's like some sort of footer and stuff like that, but there's actually some menus here. Like I can see my entities, I can see my patients. It's actually pre-populated with some data as well, which is pretty cool. I can list them. You can see that it's already paginated them. It only has 10 items, so I cannot actually go to the next page. But if there were more, then I could actually go to the next page and the next page and the last page and the first page and so on. I could view a single one. I can edit a single one. It will make me fill in the things that we have said that, hey, this is mandatory. It will make me fill them in. For example, CURP is mandatory in this case. So you can see it there with a little red thing. What else? Yeah, images and so on. It's been uploaded. I mean, as you can actually see it directly there, like it understands that this is an image and how it can display it. Then you have also the cool part is that you get all this administration part for free. So user management, in this case, since we were using the default authentication, that here you would be able to create new users and so on. Usually you would use an external IDP. You would probably use like Keycloak, or you would go for something else that you would have, some AD. You get a bunch of matrix also from the JVM, but also like we were talking about, some endpoints, how many times your endpoints have been touched. Here you see that 23 times we've already touched them, 3 times we've seen patients, and so on. What about the cache? Has it been used? How many times has it been used? And so on. 1 minute left. The health, you can also see if it's up, if it's down, if it's unknown. logs, you can actually at runtime change the level of your log. So if you have a bug in production, for example, you can easily change the log level of a certain class or a certain set of classes. So you can go in and check without having to redeploy. You can go to your Swagger API. You can see, okay, how am I supposed to call these receipts API? You can actually execute it from here. This is required. I put the number 1, for example, and I get a response. So, I mean, you get so many things for free. This is, yeah, if I go to the database, I can actually connect to the database instantly and see what's in the database. I have my authorities, I have my users. For example, if I select all the users, run keyboard, I can see that I have the admin, I have the user, etc. So all these things you get for free.
Yeah.
Have a look. jhipster.tech. It won't be part of the rest of the DevHour, but you will see similarities since they're using such good way of organizing their projects. We will basically be using the same way of organizing our projects, but you will see it being done from scratch, how you would do it by hand, how you would do it if this application was up and running already and you were joining a team that already had something up and running. What would you do then, right? You want to use a generator to generate things.
Okay, John.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. You seem exhausted almost.
That was quite a lot of speaking.
Yeah, and for next session, we will start packaging our application into Docker images, and we will run it in a local Kubernetes network that we will set up. And hopefully, if we have time enough, we will also try to deploy it into AWS Elastic Container Management in Kubernetes. EKS, that's a tricky one. EKS, thank you. And next time will probably be more, it's a little bit trickier next time, I think. Most people might not have worked with Kubernetes, so it's a lot of configuration to get it up and running locally. So a lot of focus will be put into actually getting your local Kubernetes setup working. And from then we will continue on and trying to automate things using GitHub Actions and things like that. Yeah, I think that's it for today. There are no questions. Feel free to throw us a mail or something like that, or go. Yeah, we'll have in our GitHub repository. You can find it using either Meetup or. Yeah, I think it's easier. Go through Meetup and get the Git repository, and there you can also have a contact information as well. So if you have any questions or want to play around with it, just go ahead. And yeah, I think that's it for today.
Thank you very much, and we'll go deeper from here on. It's just going deeper down the rabbit hole. It's going to get more interesting and maybe more complex. So follow along and have fun with us. Please ask questions.
Yeah.
See you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.